Welcome back, everybody. Today we're diving into a philosophy that I think might surprise you.
Oh.
Yeah, Epicureanism. And before you get any ideas, we're not just talking about like endless buffets and, parties.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common misconception about Epicureanism.
It definitely is. We're going way beyond those stereotypes today. We're using an article called The Epicurean Philosophy and Its Significance in Spiritual Evolution.
Interesting title.
It is, right. And it's from a website called The Spiritual Seek. And get this, we're going to uncover how a philosophy that often gets labeled as, hedonistic,
Right.
can actually be a pathway to personal growth.
I think that's a really fascinating connection that a lot of people don't make.
Totally. We'll also be comparing Epicureanism to other big philosophies,
Okay.
like Buddhism, Stoicism, so you can really see where it fits in the big picture of, philosophical thought.
Yep.
But first, let's tackle that big misconception head on.
Okay.
When you hear Epicureanism, what's the first thing that pops into your head?
I mean, I think a lot of people would probably say pure pleasure seeker. Right.
Exactly. Someone who's all about indulging in every whim. But is that really accurate?
Not at all. I mean, Epicurus, he did believe that pleasure was like the ultimate good.
Okay.
But he wasn't talking about those fleeting indulgences. Like, he was more focused on the absence of pain, both physical, which he called aponia, and mental, which was ataraxia.
So not just avoiding pain, but actually striving for the state of being where you're just free from it.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it as a kind of tranquility, freedom from disturbance.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. So it's less about constantly chasing these highs.
Right.
And more about cultivating a lasting sense of peace.
Exactly. And he believed that you could, minimize pain, both physical and mental, not by avoiding it altogether,
right,
but by understanding its nature.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like, for example, if you understand physical pain, it often stems from unmet needs. You can focus on fulfilling those needs.
Oh, I see.
In a healthy, sustainable way.
Yeah, okay. But how does this focus on the absence of pain actually translate into a path for spiritual growth?
Right.
It seems a bit counterintuitive. I mean, don't we often grow through challenges?
Yeah.
Through discomfort?
You're absolutely right. Growth often does involve pushing past our comfort zones. But Epicurus believed that by achieving ataraxia,
right,
that state of mental tranquility, we actually free ourselves from unnecessary anxieties and fears that can hold us back from real growth.
Okay.
It's about removing the mental obstacles that prevent us from reaching our full potential.
I'm starting to see the connection here. So it's not about seeking pleasure just for the sake of it, but rather about creating this mental and emotional space for genuine growth and self-discovery.
Exactly.
The article we're looking at today highlights 3 key Epicurean practices that I think are incredibly relevant to anyone who's interested in personal development. The first one is a critical examination of beliefs.
Right. So Epicurus, he encouraged his followers to question everything.
Everything.
Especially those long-held beliefs and assumptions that might be causing them unnecessary pain or limiting their perspectives. Imagine holding on to a belief that's been weighing you down for years.
Yeah.
Could letting go of that belief, even if it's scary at first, lead to a greater sense of freedom, a greater sense of happiness.
It's like he's saying, don't just accept things blindly. Think for yourself.
Exactly.
That resonates with me, even though I don't consider myself a philosopher.
No, yeah. But it's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
I think it transcends any specific philosophical school of thought. And then there's mindfulness.
Oh, yeah. Mindfulness.
The second practice.
Yeah.
And that's a concept that's gotten really popular lately.
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere these days.
It is. But Epicurean mindfulness, it has a unique twist.
What do you mean?
It's not just about being, present in the moment. It's about actively savoring those simple pleasures.
Okay.
But doing so with the understanding that those pleasures are fleeting.
Oh, I see.
And that prevents us from clinging too tightly to them and experiencing pain when those pleasures inevitably fade.
So it's about enjoying those everyday joys like a good cup of coffee or a beautiful sunset, but without getting attached to them or letting them become the sole source of your happiness.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. And then the third practice, community engagement.
Yes.
That one might surprise some people who who associate Epicureanism with self-indulgence.
Right.
But Epicurus actually placed a really high value on genuine friendship.
He did.
So it's not just about like networking or having people to party with.
No, not at all. He saw friendship as essential for a fulfilling life.
Okay.
Not as a means to an end, but as a source of genuine pleasure in itself. You know, these connections, they provide support, intellectual stimulation, a sense of belonging,
Right.
all of which contribute to a happier and more meaningful existence.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. It's not about seeking pleasure for pleasure's sake, but rather about cultivating a life of tranquility,
Right.
mindfulness, and genuine connection.
That's a great way to put it.
But how does this compare to other philosophies that deal with finding meaning, with finding happiness? It's time for like our philosophical face-off.
Oh, okay.
First up, Epicureanism versus Buddhism.
Two philosophies that, on the surface, seem worlds apart.
Yeah.
Yet they share this common thread.
Hmm.
The understanding that attachment leads to suffering.
Okay.
Where they diverge, however, is in their approach to dealing with that suffering.
So what are the key differences in their approaches?
Well, Buddhism, it places a strong emphasis on meditation
Okay.
as a means to detach from desires and ultimately achieve enlightenment.
Okay.
Epicureanism, while acknowledging the importance of mindfulness, takes a more intellectual approach,
Okay.
encouraging followers to achieve tranquility through understanding the nature of reality and their place within it.
So Buddhism is more about like quieting the mind through meditation, while Epicureanism is about engaging the mind through reflection and understanding.
You could say that, and this difference is also apparent in their ultimate goals.
Okay.
While Buddhism aims for nirvana,
Right.
a state of complete liberation from suffering,
Okay.
Epicureanism, it seeks ataraxia,
Right.
that state of mental tranquility, freedom from disturbance.
So both philosophies are offering paths to like a heightened state of awareness, but they have like different ideas about what that awareness entails and what constitutes like true fulfillment.
Exactly, and that's what makes exploring these different philosophies so fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to happiness, to fulfillment. What resonates with you might be very different from what resonates with someone else.
I totally agree. Now, how about Stoicism? That's another philosophy that's often mentioned alongside Epicureanism,
Yes.
but they seem to have like very different approaches to life.
They do, and the key distinction lies in their views on virtue.
Okay.
For Stoics, virtue is the highest good,
Right.
the be-all and end-all.
Okay.
They believe that by living a virtuous life, you'll naturally achieve tranquility and fulfillment.
Okay.
Epicureans, on the other hand, they see virtue as a means to an end. They believe that being virtuous helps you avoid pain and achieve pleasure,
Okay.
but it's not the ultimate goal in itself.
So it's a question of priorities.
Right.
For Stoics, virtue is the top priority.
Yes,
Well, for Epicureans, it's like a tool for achieving happiness.
precisely. And this difference extends to their views on emotions.
Oh, okay.
So Stoics, they advocate for apatheia.
Apathia.
Yeah, which is complete emotional detachment.
Right.
They believe you should control your emotions rather than letting them control you.
Okay.
Epicureans, however, they acknowledge that emotions are a natural part of being human.
Right.
And they advocate for understanding and managing them rather than trying to suppress them entirely.
So it's about finding a balance between reason and emotion,
Yeah.
rather than trying to just eliminate emotion altogether.
Exactly. And that's a crucial distinction between the two philosophies. It's not that Epicureans encourage you to be ruled by your emotions.
Right.
But they believe that understanding and working with your emotions is a more sustainable path to achieving ataraxia,
Right.
that state of inner peace that we discussed earlier.
This is all incredibly insightful. I think I'm starting to understand the nuances of Epicureanism a lot better.
Good.
But how about we put all this knowledge to the test?
What do you mean?
Remember that Epicurean test?
Oh, yeah.
We mentioned earlier from the article.
Right.
It's time to see if you, our listener, vibe with the core principles of Epicureanism.
I love it. Little philosophical quiz. I'm curious to see how our listeners score.
Me too. All right, so are you ready to put your Epicurean knowledge to the test?
Let's do it.
Okay. We're going to read you a series of statements,
Okay.
and you decide whether each one aligns with Epicurus's philosophy.
Got it.
No peeking at the answers.
Okay.
All right. Statement number 1. The good can be obtained easily. What do you think? True or false?
Think back to what we've discussed about the types of pleasures that Epicurus valued
Right.
and the path to achieving ataraxia.
Exactly. Take a moment to ponder that one.
Right.
Okay. Moving on to statement number 2. The key to happiness lies in moderation. That one sounds familiar. What do you say?
Remember, Epicurus was not a hedonist.
Statement number 3. Pleasure is primarily the absence of pain. Ooh, getting a little deeper now.
This speaks directly to the core of what we talked about earlier regarding ataraxia and aponia.
All right, statement number 4. Not all pleasures are to be sought equally. Interesting.
Think about the distinctions Epicurus made between different types of pleasure
Yeah.
and their impact on achieving a tranquil and fulfilling life.
Number 5. What is frightening about death is its anticipation. Now that's a thought-provoking one.
Epicurus had some very specific ideas about death,
Right.
which he felt should not be feared.
And last but not least, statement number 6. Philosophy can and should be practiced by young and old alike. What do you think? Is philosophy just for, stuffy academics? Or can anyone benefit from it?
This gets to the heart of what makes Epicureanism so relevant today.
All right, those are all 6 statements. No cheating. We'll reveal the answers in part 2 and see how you scored. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Welcome back. Ready to find out if your Epicurean instincts are spot on?
I know I am. Let's go through each statement and see how you did.
Okay.
Statement number 1. The good can be obtained easily. True or false? What's the verdict?
That one is false. Remember, Epicurus believed that true happiness, or eudaimonia, it comes from cultivating knowledge, practicing virtue, and nurturing friendships.
Right.
These are ongoing pursuits. They require effort, intention. They don't just magically appear.
So no quick fixes or shortcuts to the good life, huh?
Nope.
All right. Statement number 2. The key to happiness lies in moderation. What do you think?
That one is true.
Okay.
Epicurus believed that overindulgence in even something pleasurable could lead to imbalance and ultimately pain. So he advocated for this measured approach to life, finding that sweet spot where pleasure enhances your well-being without leading to negative consequences.
So enjoy those pleasures, but don't let them rule you.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Okay. Statement number 3. Pleasure is primarily the absence of pain. Did you get this one right?
This is absolutely true. And it gets to the very heart of Epicureanism.
Right.
Remember, aponia and ataraxia. Epicurus believed that the most enduring form of pleasure comes from minimizing both physical and mental pain, achieving that state of tranquility and freedom from disturbance.
So it's less about seeking out intense thrills and more about cultivating a sense of inner peace and contentment.
You got it. It's a subtle but powerful distinction. All right, are you ready for statement number 4?
Bring it on.
Here it is. Not all pleasures are to be sought equally. True or false?
What do you think, listeners? Did you pick up on this nuance during our deep dive?
That's another true statement. Epicurus recognized that some pleasures are fleeting and ultimately lead to more pain than they're worth. Think of instant gratification.
Right.
It might feel good in the moment, but it can have negative consequences down the road.
Yeah.
He encouraged his followers to prioritize lasting pleasures, like those derived from knowledge, meaningful relationships, and living in accordance with nature.
So it's about choosing your pleasures wisely, considering both their immediate and long-term impact on your well-being. That's a lesson that's relevant whether you're an Epicurean or not. Okay, let's move on to statement number 5. What is frightening about death is its anticipation. What do you think? True or false?
That's true. Epicurus had a fascinating perspective on death.
Yeah.
He believed that death is simply the cessation of sensation and consciousness and nothing to be feared.
Okay.
He argued that fear and anxiety stem from our thoughts or beliefs about death, not from death itself.
So it's our own minds that create the fear, not the actual event of dying. It's almost like he's saying, we shouldn't waste precious time worrying about something that's inevitable and ultimately beyond our control.
Exactly.
Okay.
And finally, statement number 6. Philosophy can and should be practiced by young and old alike. What's your verdict on this one?
I have a feeling a lot of our listeners got this one right.
I hope so. This statement is absolutely true. Epicurus believed that philosophy wasn't just an abstract intellectual pursuit. It was a practical guide to living a good life, a life filled with pleasure and free from pain. And that pursuit, he believed, was something that people of all ages and backgrounds could benefit from.
Okay, listeners, it's time to tally up your score.
Right.
If you answered 5 or 6 statements correctly, you've definitely got an Epicurean mindset.
Yeah.
3 or 4 correct means you're on the right track. And maybe this deep dive has sparked a deeper interest in exploring Epicurean philosophy further.
Yeah.
And if you only got 1 or 2 right, don't worry. The point isn't to be perfect.
Right.
It's to engage with these ideas and see what resonates with you.
I completely agree. This test it's simply a fun way to reflect on what we've discussed.
Yeah.
And maybe even challenge some of your preconceived notions about Epicureanism.
Exactly. So even if you didn't ace the test, I hope you've gained a new appreciation for this often misunderstood philosophy. It's so much more than just eat, drink, and be merry.
Absolutely. It's a philosophy that encourages critical thinking, mindfulness, genuine connection, and a pursuit of happiness that's both sustainable and deeply fulfilling.
I think this has been an incredibly enlightening conversation, wouldn't you say?
I agree.
But before we completely wrap up, I wanted to circle back to something we touched upon earlier, the difference between Epicureanism and hedonism.
Right.
I think it's worth diving a little deeper into this distinction because it's crucial for understanding what Epicureanism is truly about.
Yeah, it's really easy to fall into that trap of thinking, Epicureanism, it's all about indulging in every pleasure imaginable. But as we've been discussing, it's so much more nuanced than that.
It really is. And you see, while both Epicureanism and hedonism acknowledge the importance of pleasure, their approaches, they diverge in a really fundamental way.
How so?
Well, hedonism, it often prioritizes immediate gratification.
Okay.
And those intense, often sensory pleasures.
Okay.
Without much consideration for the long-term consequences.
So it's all about chasing that instant dopamine hit.
Exactly.
Regardless of the potential downsides.
Yeah.
Okay.
Epicureanism, on the other hand, it emphasizes a more mindful and balanced approach.
Yeah.
It's about understanding that true pleasure comes from choosing wisely.
Selecting those pleasures that contribute to your overall well-being. And avoiding those that lead to pain or disruption of your inner peace.
It's about making choices that lead to a fulfilling life, not just a fleeting moment of excitement or indulgence.
Precisely. And there's another crucial difference between the two philosophies.
Okay.
Hedonism tends to be very individualistic.
Okay.
Focused solely on maximizing personal pleasure.
Right.
Whereas Epicurus, he believed that true happiness couldn't be achieved in isolation.
Okay.
He stressed the importance of ethical behavior, living in harmony with others,
right,
and contributing to the well-being of your community.
So it's not just about you and your own pleasure. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected.
Right.
And that our actions have an impact on others.
That's right. And that's an aspect of Epicureanism that I think often gets overlooked. It's not about retreating into a world of self-indulgence.
Right.
It's about finding a way to live a pleasurable life that's also in harmony with the world around you.
I think that's a really important point to emphasize. So often Epicureanism gets reduced to this caricature of pure hedonism.
Right.
But as we've seen, it's a much richer and more thoughtful philosophy.
It certainly is. And I think it has a lot to offer us today.
Yeah.
Even if we don't subscribe to every single tenet.
Right.
It encourages us to question our assumptions, to be mindful of the choices we make, and to prioritize genuine connection and a sense of community.
Those are values that I think, most of us can get behind,
Yeah.
regardless of our philosophical leanings.
I agree. And who knows, maybe by incorporating some of these Epicurean principles into our own lives,
Yeah.
we can move a little closer to that state of ataraxia. Yeah. That Epicurus values so highly.
A little more peace and tranquility in our lives. I think that's something we could all benefit from.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into Epicureanism.
It has.
I have to say, I've learned a lot, and I hope our listeners have too.
Me too.
We've debunked some myths, explored some surprisingly deep connections, and maybe even challenged you to rethink your own definition of happiness.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you and our listeners.
The pleasure was all ours. So to our listeners, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking those lasting pleasures that make life truly worth living. Until next time, happy philosophizing.